You should see the setup that I have for this right now. Anyways, quality not good again because I have this is on the front facing camera because I couldn't get it to film on the backwards without. I think the last time I did a wrap up, it was probably March. As you may or may not know, it's August now, but I am only going to be going into July. And I saw somebody do a like quarterly thing where they basically do every 3 months, I believe it was. And I think I want to start doing that because I feel like I'm just rehashing what older videos, like the video before it, is, and so I feel like doing some like quarterly stuff would probably work the best because then I would have more to talk about, I guess, is my thinking of that. Anyways, let's get to where we left off last time. So, the Jade Legacy or Greenbone Saga is the last thing that I was talking about. I was finishing up the last book, which is Jade Legacy. So, I have already kind of talked trash on this in my mid-year book freakout tag, but Jade Legacy and the Greenbone Saga was kind of a disappointment for me. And I feel like this series had so much potential, and it was also something that I didn't really like, which is urban fantasy. And I do think if you love urban fantasy, it's going to be kind of your thing. I had some issues with some things that the characters did, or like only really one character. And the rest of it, I was like, cool. And then it was just kind of the way that she concluded the last book just didn't really feel like it was too well done. Like, it didn't feel like she knew how to complete the series. It kind of just felt like she didn't really know what she was doing. And then we ended up with this, but I ended up giving Jade Legacy 2 stars, which I don't tend to give out that much. It happened here, alright? Now, since I've already talked so much trash on that series, I think we're gonna move on to the next book that I read. I have my Notion here, and I don't know if you can see how hard it is to tell between the books that I have finished and the ones I haven't. So the next book that I finished is the third book in the Expanse series, which is Abandon's Gate. I ended up giving that 3 stars. I really loved this series, but this third book was kind of just not it for me. The second book I really loved the characters that are introduced, because if you don't know, we have these like 4 main group of people, and then we have kind of this story that's going on outside of them but ends up connecting to them towards the end of the book. And with this one, I saw like it had a lot of potential, and I did like majority of the storylines. It was just kind of the way that they concluded, or more or less stagnated through like the middle of the book kind of thing. But this series has become like one of my comfort series because it has found family in it, and it's like the main 4 people within this book. Although we only get a perspective from one of them in there, it's multi POV with the characters on the outside. What is happening to my voice? My voice is leaving me. See if you can pick that up. I don't know. The second book, I really loved Robin, and I don't think I'm going to be able to say her name correctly. Averacella. She's like a politician and everything. And there were interesting point of views in Abandon's Gate, but it was kind of just like not as good as the second book, and I guess that kind of like ruined my judgment for it. But this series also has something that I really love, which is, and I know it's going to sound crazy to a lot of people, especially after what, has happened in the past couple of years, but with, like, there's this virus that's going around that's turning people into zombies and stuff, and I freaking love that. And then you add space to it and sci-fi. Love it so much. And so that's basically what this entire series is about, is them trying to, like, stop this thing that's, this proto molecule, and they're trying to fix all of these things and try to stop all of it from becoming a weapon and everything, and it's so good. The first 2 books in this series are on Kindle Unlimited if you are interested in them, the Expanse series. There's also a TV show on this. The next book, my annoying little self is so happy to talk about, is Rhythm of War, which I ended up giving 4 stars. Because of course I did. Alright, the Stormlight Archives is surprisingly one of my comfort series, just as much as The Expanse is, so I kind of read comfort series back to back, which I did not mean to at all, but that's kind of just what happened. So I'm very annoying about this series. If you've watched any of my other videos, I reference this book series even when I'm talking about other book series. I'm very annoying about it, alright? Each of these books are over 1,000 pages. It's a kind of epic fantasy. I don't even know how to describe it because there's so many different elements that go into it. And it was the second series by Brandon Sanderson that I started, and I was very much headstrong on wanting to read this series. I for some reason was just I really liked the Mistborn and the Skyward. I only read the two first books in that series, but I was just kind of I want to keep reading this series, his theories. And I know that it's not recommended to dive headfirst into the Stormlight Archives, but I'm gonna be very honest with you. I don't really think it matters that much. I think it's cool to get references and stuff, but I don't really care that much, honestly. Rhythm of War is the 4th book. The 5th book, the last one in this arc, is coming out at the end of this year, which I am very excited about. And I cannot wait to get my grubby little fingers on it, alright? Because especially in this book, my baby boy Kaladin suffered, and I do not like that. If you've watched me at all, you know how much I complain about the fact that he has made Kaladin suffer. That's kind of my review of Rhythm of War. It's really good. I don't really know how much I can describe this book because it's the 4th book in a series. I just know that it's a comfort series for me. It's over 1,000 pages, so it can be a lot for other people, but I personally love it, and I don't really know how much you should care about my opinion. The next book that I read is Killjoy, which is a prequel novella to the A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. It's basically just her before, well, it's a prequel, so obviously, but it's her before she takes on the senior capstone of trying to investigate the murder, if you've read the series at all. This was really fun. A really little fun thing. I do have to say though, if you know what happens with Pip's friends that she's with in this book, you're kind of ugh. It is very nice to kind of see a more normal, grounded Pip after reading the last book in the series, because if you know what happens, it's oh my gosh, what the heck type thing. So it was very nice to kind of see her and kind of see that she has always been like this, where she's kind of just able to put things together and has really good investigative skills. And I just want to say, if she ever wants to write a sequel series to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, I would read it, alright? Ravi and Pip just kind of going and solving stuff together, having a private PI company together, I would read that so hard, alright? So, the next book that I did read is The Heartless Hunter or The Crimson Moth, depending on where you're from. I kind of got addicted to this book. I flew through it, alright? And I didn't even mean to. It wasn't even that good, if we're very honest, although I did give it 4 stars. Oops. It was very much the concept of how do I describe this? Of where they have to find or investigate something on somebody's body, and another character's you could just sleep with them, and normally it's oh no, I would never do that. This book takes that and goes, yeah, but what if they did? And honestly, not that mad about it. It's a witch and a witch hunter, and the power system in this is very unique. I do think I will be reading the second book. I have said time and time again that I love how this book has ended because I love when books have kind of their own, like, setup for the second book in the series, and that it's not just like a full conclusion and then they're like, oh, but like actually in the second book, where you just kind of lead it into the second book rather than it just being like full on conclusion and then having to like backtrack a little bit when the second book comes out. So I very much appreciate that. I think that this is only supposed to be a duology, which we love. We love a good duology and not just a freaking series. But I originally was like Matthias and Nina because I was like a witch and a witch hunter. I was like, oh my gosh. It doesn't necessarily give those vibes, but like it does have like the kind of same trope of, you know, him being a witch hunter and her being a witch and him kind of being like put off by that, but like also he doesn't believe that she's a witch, so it's kind of just like I don't know. The next book that I finished is One Dark Window, which is a duology, although I wouldn't mind. There is another character, it's Ravens, who is the main male love interest in the first book, his sister. I would not mind getting a book on her. Just saying. But I would eat that book up. One Dark Window is, how do I say, it's has a very interesting, again, very annoyingly I'm saying interesting, magic system in it, and I do really like it. It's basically about these 12 cards, and if you unite this whole deck of cards, that it will stop all of this powers and horrible stuff and fog that's happening. And it's very interesting what you can do with certain cards, and then also the people who do have powers because of the fog, and how this fog and everything came about, like the mythology of all of this is really interesting. I do have to say though, the romance within One Dark Window was not my favorite. It kind of just felt not rushed necessarily, but it kind of just felt like there was tension for like maybe the first 50 pages, and then it was just like they're in a relationship now, and it was like, what? It kind of, I guess I like books that build up more tension in relationships than it kind of just like happening instantly. And I have discovered very much about myself that I do kind of read certain books for the relationships in them. And so when there's books like these where the relationship just happens instantly and I'm not hooked on the world, I'm kind of just like, I don't want to keep reading this. But thankfully for this, I was interested in the world and kind of how this was going to conclude. And let me say, the ending of this book, there's a certain character that he's written and meant to be kind of this like villain type, like vile person, but not in the good way. You know, I know a dark romance for some of y'all has made your brains be like, villain? Oh my gosh. But in this, it's very much a revenge at the end of this book, and I remember reading that and my eyes were like wide open. I was like, oh my gosh. It's very violent, by the way, but it was so freaking good. And I do have to say, I think the world that she built was very, very good, honestly. Next book is All You Need Is Kill, which is a manga, and it's the first time I ever read a manga, and I didn't read it physically. I read it on my iPad, which I know is a sin to some people. It was very good. The movie Tomorrow's Edge is based off of this, and it's basically a Groundhog Day type situation with aliens, and I very much appreciated in this the way that he kind of closed up the loopholes with having the character kind of go and try to like get out of this, and then it being like, oh no, you can't. I very much appreciate when they do that, because when you're reading some Groundhog type day things and there's like things that reset them, you're kind of like, couldn't you just avoid that by going and doing this thing? But they never try it or do it. So for my little brain, it helps appease me to have them be like, oh no, you can't do that. And I'm like, thank you so much. But I ended up giving All You Need Is Kill 3 stars. I do want to get into more manga, it's just I do it through Libby, and let me just say, they don't have all of the series, like any of the ones that I want to read, because there's so many. And then also, majority of them are on hold for months. So it's like, you know, what do I want to do? Maybe if I go in person and do it, although a lot of the first editions in libraries of mangas are taken. So I do want to get into reading Yona of the Dawn because I've heard so many people rave and talk about how good that is, and so I kind of want to get into it, and it kind of sounds up my alley with like a princess and everything, but that's kind of my first little toe tip into manga. The second book is, or at least the edition that I read, is not available in my library, which is so fun. The next book that is Two Twisted Crowns. I ended up giving it 4 stars. All right, this book is, funny enough, better rated on Goodreads than the first one, and I was like, going into it, I was like, I don't know how that is, because why would it be better rated than the first book? Like, does she have some really good ending to Raisin, Raven, and Elspeth's like storyline? When I tell you that I was talking about how much I love the side characters in this series, let me tell you, she delivered on that. All right, we get Elm's perspective. Although I do wish, because there's a second romance in this, I do wish, that is a spoiler, isn't it? The second person, the other love interest to Elm, got a perspective in this. She didn't. She didn't. And I kind of really wish that she did, because I feel like that would have made it a lot more interesting. I just love when there's dual POV and they're both kind of pining after each other. But Elm has become one of my favorite characters. He's such a sweet and endearing and loving boy. He's like, oh my gosh. I remember reading the first book and just the sarcasm and the way that he dealt with stuff, and just like, and the things he did, I was just like, I have fallen in love with this man. And when I tell you, I was so happy that we got his perspective and his love story in it, and it wasn't just like a quest with Raven and Elspeth, even though that was the other part of it. I was so happy that we had kind of something else to hold us over with it, because the journey wasn't boring with Raven and Elspeth, but it wasn't like the most interesting thing. So the romance kind of does like make you want to keep reading, because you're like, oh my gosh, especially because it's Elm. All right, Elm is incredible. So if you didn't really like the first book, I would say the second book is a lot better, which is not normal for me. Normally, I hate the second books in series, but with this, I absolutely adored the second book in the series. And again, it's a duology, even though I do wish that there was another book on Raven's sister, because I loved her character so much, and I really wish that we got more of her. But yeah, the next book is The Pale Dreamer, which I ended up giving 3 stars. This is the prequel novella to the Bone season, but my library only has the non-edited 10-year anniversary editions, and that makes it so I had to read it on Libby, and I don't really like doing that. I don't know why. My brain is just like, has an aversion to it for some reason. I have no idea why. I wish I could sit here and be like, this is the reason why. No. This world is very interesting. Now, if you heard me say that I don't really like urban fantasy, you're probably like, huh? But the entire series was on Libby, just like nobody had rented it out. Like literally nobody. I was like, oh my gosh. But like I said, it was not the edited version, and I do really want to read the edited version, because I believe if you're changing stuff, you have a reason to. And I also feel like with the kind of weird reading mood and slump that I've been in recently, I feel like I would want to give this world kind of my full attention, because it's not necessarily something that I would gravitate towards, because it is set more in the future. It didn't really talk about technology that much, but it is also about like ghost hunting type things and different people with different powers and everything. And it was, the plot of the Bone season was very interesting to me, because it kind of had like, she was working with one of the enemies, quote unquote, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's really interesting. And then I saw that there was the prequel novella, and I was like, let me read that. Now, I know some people are like, you don't read it in that order. I'm gonna read it in the order that the author has put it in, alright? If it's a prequel, I'm gonna read it, okay? Shh. I know that that enrages some people, alright? But I tend to really not care about reading order. As you can probably tell, I absolutely love this. I think that the world is definitely very interesting. I do also really just want the physical books in the series because the 10-year anniversary ones are very pretty, especially the Bone Season, the first book. But the next book that I read is Gideon the Ninth. Can I tell you how much I love this freaking book? Alright, and I was kind of just like, this is the first library book that I've really finished in a good minute. Alright, a lot of these books are Kindle Unlimited books, and say that I'm kind of ashamed of myself for that would be an understatement. Alright, this book, Gideon the Ninth, I kind of was expecting to not absolutely love it. All I knew was that people were talking about how good the character and the world were, and I was just kind of like, heard you say that about so many books that aren't good, but this world is so good. The sarcasm, there's a trial-based thing, the relationships between two characters, the two, like, the ninth house that we follow, the houses and the other house characters, and just kind of the way that everything ended. I couldn't even be mad at it because I was just like, this is so good. I really do adore this book so much, and Gideon so freaking much. This book I ended up giving 4 stars. It was so close to being a 5-star if we're going to be entirely honest with ourselves. It's just not the type of world that I typically love, which is why it was so shocking that it was so close to a 5-star, because it is set in like a futuristic thing, but it doesn't really have like technology in it, if that makes any sense. Like, it's in the future and they have like references to kind of old, like past technology that's now like modern technology, but it's like old and doesn't work, and it's kind of just like, what is that thing? Like, a very unique world, and the multiple plot lines in this were so freaking good, honestly. But I just adore Gideon so much, and yeah, her writing is also really good. I just, the sarcasm in it, there were a couple jokes that I was like, ugh, but I found that in the Expanse series, I've found that in Stormlight Archives, I found that in any book that has humor in it, that there are always gonna be some some jokes that I'm gonna be like, ugh, but majority of them did stick, and I do love me a sarcastic character, especially one that is good with sword fighting. The trials are basically to become like a god, but she's not the one competing. You have Haro who's competing, and she is basically her, oh no, I forget what it's called, but she's basically like the person that stands there and like guards her and everything, and so she works with swords and stuff, and she's really good at it. The next book is Quicksilver, which I do have to say I am kind of ashamed of myself for not reading, but just for the amount of pages I read of it every single day. It was very addictive, and I am kind of ashamed at the fact that it was. I ended up giving Quicksilver 3 stars, even though it was very addictive. This has, okay, this is basically about a girl who lives in like this very hot, messed up world, and she goes accidentally into this like Fey realm, and she has these powers. She's the only one who can help save the Fey from these other monsters. It also has vampires in it, like technically vampires. What other book was I reading that just like vampires suddenly showed up and I was just like, what the heck is happening? I think I DNF'd that book and didn't put it on here. Anyways, I was reading it and they were like, vampires, and I was like, huh? What are you talking? What do you mean vampires? But yeah, it's very funny to me, the fact that it's the trope of like, she's the only one who can save us, but she's human, so she's like not as good as we are. And it's like, I don't know why I dislike Fae stuff. I'm coming around on it a little bit more, but it's just like, for some reason, the excuse to be rude to somebody because they're not the same species as you, or that's just the way that your people act, is crazy to me. And then them being like falling in love with the only person who's basically nice to them because everybody else is horrific to them. It's kind of just like, why is this a thing? Why is this a trope? Like, we don't need this. Anyways, we're gonna move on from that. I don't know. Did I finish this within this month? Oh, I did. I literally finished it on the last day of July. The last book that I finished in July is a beginning of a series, which will be not my next video, but it will be my next video, possibly. I don't know, something could happen where it could not be that, but the first book in the Married to Magic series, which is a deal with the Elf King. This book, I ended up giving it 3 stars. This book was interesting, to say the least. I think I'm gonna leave like majority of my opinions for the video that's coming out, but let's just say this was 317 pages and it was supposed to have a hate to love trope. Now, I don't know about you, but a hate to love trope within 317 pages. How do you think that's gonna work, huh? How do you think that's gonna work? How do you think that's gonna work? And again, the whole thing of she's a human, but she only has powers that can save our realm. Like, oh my gosh, and we're all horrible to her because, like, we're upset that we're not, able to save it ourselves and everything. It's a very interesting world. It's a very interesting book. That's what I'm gonna leave it at, alright? Now, let's talk about some of my DNFs and indefinite DNFs. So let's start with the indefinite DNFs. I guess a lot of these are indefinite DNFs. Now, I don't have all of them on here because I kind of don't like having the mess of my Notion having saying in progress every 5 seconds. The amount that I have DNF'd is kind of crazy, alright? My indefinite DNFs are The Mad Ship by Robin Hobb. I have it literally sitting over there. I have the physical version of it. This is a live Tradership series, but it's a continuation in I forget exactly what the world is called, but I do really want to get to later books within the series, but I have to read these ones first because I freaking loved Wit, and I can't remember his name at this exact second, but they have books together later on, and I really want to read those. So I'm kind of trying to read in order of these now. Has it been since, like, March since I've read this book? Yes. Have I only been listening to it on audiobook, and have I stopped doing that since, like, March? Yes. Do I need to pick it back up because I need to finish it? Yes I do, because I have the last book in the series, which I, again, am forgetting the name of, on my shelf currently, and I desperately need to finish listening or reading it, but yeah, that's an indefinite DNF as of right now. The second one is Jasmine Throne. I got this from Libby from my library, and so I only had it for a couple days, and I was in a non-reading mood, book slump, at the time that I started it, and then it just kept happening where I was reading other books at the time, and I wasn't able to take it out from the library, and every time I keep getting it, I'm currently reading a different book, so, that's really fun. And then The Deep Sky, I don't know if that's an indefinite DNF. It might be a permanent DNF. I don't know. It was during the book slump type thing, and it was just not my cup of tea at the time. It is sci-fi and like a space mystery I can say this because this is on the back of it and it's not a spoiler, there's this explosion that kills a bunch of people, and she's kind of trying to figure out with the rest of the crew, like, what happened. It is a very interesting concept, and it does have a really fun thing where it kind of ties back to her past. Like, you get a chapter of, like, her past, and then we go into the present. And I do love when books do that, when they're able to tie those things together. So that is a very interesting concept if you're looking for, like, a space mystery. with that style of stuff, I would recommend it. I don't know if I will pick it up. I like to say and think that I will, but like eh. And then also all of these DNFs, I'm kind of just like I don't know. I don't know. The Spark of the Everflame, I forget what the series is called, but I might end up doing a video on this series. I have no idea, but that's just really fun. And let me see if I have any of my other ones. Oh, okay. I do remember now. So we have the Jasad Air, When the Moon Hatched, the Wren in the Holly Library. Those are all of my DNFs as of right now. And then you want to know what I'm currently reading? Because it should be very obvious, because I'm reading a Married to Magic book right now, because I'm currently reading the series, if you didn't catch me saying that. I'm currently reading A Dance with the Fae Prince. It's interesting. I'm like 69% of the way through. Also, I also one that I DNF'd is A Tempest of Tea. It's not on Kindle Unlimited. I was reading that off of Libby. That's actually kind of nice, guys. Anyways, yeah, it's been weird past couple reading months, alright? So, yeah. Sorry for not doing these types of videos, but like genuinely, when I tell you that it has been a mess, it has been a mess, alright? But anyways, thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like and subscribe. Leave a comment down below if you've read any of these books and if you've liked any of them or what your rating is on them. And also if I should pick up some of my indefinite DNFs. Thank you so much. Bye.